Hello, guys, and welcome to the panel here at the Northeast Comic Con, guaranteed not boring with free parking. I'm Michael Grassi. I'll be hosting the panel today, talking with Keith Williams about the era of superheroes and heroes going back to the good old days, even before heroes were heroes, right?
That's right.
So yeah, this is a people at home, if you're watching, this is a live Get in Tune here at the Northeast Comic Con. It's a fantastic show. I've been having a lot of fun. Got another panel coming up at 3:30 with Ron McCluskey. With Ron McCluskey, who's the Boris Karloff historian at 3:30 right here in the seminar room. So let me turn the camera over to Keith Williams.
Hey,
How you doing, Keith?
good, doing good.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
So before we get into some of the stuff about the classics, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your career?
Oh well, okay. Went to school of visual arts back in the 80s. Actually, the 70s. Had Will Eisner as a teacher. Really great teacher. Taught me a lot, and finally, after getting out of visual arts in the 80s, 1980, as a matter of fact, didn't exactly get straight into comic books. Had to slowly work my way into it and show my stuff to people like Jim Shooter and Maurice Severance at the time, I think, and John Romita, and they all looked at my stuff and said, "Oh, you got promise, but it's not just yet." So I had to, I'd go back home. I was upset, but hey, I was determined and kept working on my stuff. And fortunately, got to meet Don Perlin through Howard Perlin, his son. Who I was helping out in school shows at my old high school, South Shore, and got to meet Don, and he saw my stuff and he saw some promise in it, and actually got me my first job working at Marvel as a background inker.
Wow.
Yeah. Working with Mike Esposito on Marvel Team Up. And he was the inker on that. And, Ron Friends was actually the pence. Well, first was Jim Mooney, and then Ron Friends took over after that point. And that's how I actually got into comics and kept my foot in the door and kept pushing my way.
Yeah, that's great. You've been doing this for a while, and you have a lot of fans. I always see your table pretty packed at shows.
Oh, well.
People love your work, love coming and talking with you. I'm a fan. I do own a couple of pieces of yours. I have a Phantom piece in my studio at home.
Oh, right.
And who we'll be talking about, because you actually did work on the Phantom.
Yes.
You were the inker on the strip?
I was the inker on the strip, and I was actually the letterer on the strip too for about 8 of the 10 years. I believe that I was working on it. Milt Snapin was the letterer on it at first, and he died, unfortunately, and they needed a new letterer, and I just, I said, I could try it. And I tried it and kept going until the end, until the time that I was off the strip.
Yeah. And how long did you do the strip for?
10 years.
10 years. What were those years again? I don't remember.
From 1995 to 2005.
Okay, because I remember meeting you, I think in 2000 or 2001, at a show at the Westchester County Center in White Plains, New York.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's when I first met you, and I first saw your Phantom work, and I'm not gonna lie, I geeked out because I've never met anyone who actually worked on the Phantom strip, and it was one of my favorite strips. The Phantom is one of my favorite characters, and I've basically followed your career since I've known about you, and like I said, you've been on my show before, and I've said this, and everyone says this: you are like the nicest guy in the industry. Everyone loves you, and it's great to, every time I see you and your work. We have some friends in common. Actually, a good friend of mine, Alex Rivera. You
Alex
worked with.
Yes,
kind of mentored him.
He's a good guy.
Yeah,
yes.
Alex is amazing.
Yes.
But let's talk about the classic heroes, because you did work on the Phantom, and let's start with him because he really is the first masked hero.
He is the first hero. He's the first guy that, I don't know if you called it spandex back then, but he was the first one to wear that kind of outfit and the shorts underwear on the outside, not on the inside, and also the white eyes. He was the first person, and he was created in, I believe, 36.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So it's absolutely amazing. Like that before Superman. Yes, he was the very first, and I never thought that I would, like, work on a character like that ever.
Yeah, no, I can completely. And were you a Phantom fan before?
I got to tell you, I wasn't.
Okay.
I didn't. I did read, like, in, I guess, Steranko's History of Comics and a few other books. Jules Pfeiffer's, I think, book on comic book superheroes about the Phantom, and that's how I got to know him, sort of. It wasn't until I actually started working on the strip that I started to learn about the Phantom, the characters that are surrounding the Phantom. And it's an incredibly, big world. Like that Lee Falk actually created. It's absolutely amazing.
I notice you have a Phantom ring on right now. Can you show that to the camera?
Yes, my Phantom, my Phantom ring. There it is.
I love that. You have a nicer one than I do.
This is the one that actually was for the movie.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, the Phantom. Yes.
Oh, because when the movie came out, I forgot what year it was, in the '90s, the Billy Zane one.
Yes.
And it was sad. I was talking about it today with someone. I went into the theater, and there was only like 8 or 10 people in the theater watching it, and it was so sad. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great way to introduce the Phantom to a new audience, to younger kids, and it just, I don't know, it wasn't marketed correctly, I guess, but it got a cult following later on in DVDs and stuff, and it's a fantastic film. But I remember going, and the theater I went to was handing out Phantom rings.
Oh, yes.
And I still
Phantom rings,
I still have my Phantom ring, but it's a little more round. Like, it doesn't have the outline like you have. It's just kind of a round skull in there.
Right. Yes. I actually went to the premiere. I think it was like 97, 96, 97.
Yeah, something like that.
And actually got to meet Billy Zane,
cool.
which was great. And they had those packets with the Phantom rings, and I think some kind of Phantom candy and stuff like that.
I don't remember. I just remember getting the ring, and I was like, oh my God, I got a Phantom ring. But yeah. So when you started, because I know for myself, and this panel isn't about me, it's about you talking about the stuff that you like here and the stuff. What was it about when you started to discover the Phantom and like learn about him? And I know you said there was these great worlds, but what was it specifically about the Phantom that really was like, I'm going to sink my teeth into this character for you?
Wow. Well, just the fact, like the myth of the Phantom, that he started like 1600s, I would think, and that the Phantom that we know now, Kit Walker, is the 21st Phantom in the series, but nobody really knows that except for maybe the Bandar tribe in Bengala. Everybody else believes that is the same Phantom that has been roaming that island country for the past bunch of hundreds of years.
That's why he has the name, the Ghost Who Walks.
The Ghost Who Walks, the man who cannot die.
Yes. All those great old jungle sayings.
The jungle sayings. Oh my God! I wish I could remember them right now.
I know,
but it's like I always smile when I was doing the lettering, and they would have the old jungle. Jungle say.
It's funny because I was introduced to the Phantom through the strips. My uncle, when I'd go visit my uncle on my dad's side, we go to my dad's family, my uncle and I would sit down and draw and read comics together. And I'm talking strip comics. So he loved the Phantom. We used to talk about, we used to read the stuff. But and although I enjoyed it, my main introduction to the character was the Defenders of the Earth cartoon, which, for the 80s, it wasn't a bad cartoon.
I liked it.
And I did. I still watch it sometimes in reruns, like on Tubi and things like that. I have the DVD collection. But that's where my love of like syndicated superheroes came from. And then I started learning about them in the actual strips. But going into that, I knew the Phantom didn't have any superpowers, but they made him have superpowers. But the superpowers were based on the old jungle sayings. like the ghost who walks has the strength of 10 tigers
Oh, yes,
and stuff
yes,
like that.
yes,
And
right.
he used
There
to
you
call
go.
upon it in the cartoon,
That's
and
right.
he'd actually got like super strength and
Yes,
stuff.
yes.
But yeah, I love that type of stuff that they did. But that era of comics, the Phantom, the time, we see things like Buck Rogers and we see Flash Gordon coming out, these characters that weren't always, masked or spandex clad. They Prince Valiant, all these characters that came out in the strips in those times. First of all, the artists behind them, Hal Foster, Alex Raymond,
Beautiful.
all these great guys. When people
Love the
talk to me
artwork,
today
yeah.
and say, who are your influences? And I talk to people, and a lot of people, I'm 46. I grew up in the, I was born in the 70s, but grew up in the 80s and 90s on comics. And everyone says, oh, the 90s comics, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, all those guys. But I'm actually looking back at Alex Raymond, Milt Caniff, all those guys were the ones that I look at as my influences. Were they the guys for you too, or were you looking at more books? When you were in the...
I knew of Alex Raymond, and his stuff was absolutely beautiful. I think Max Rayboy was another one that was like absolutely incredible. But a lot of this stuff that I was looking at was Marvel and DC. You had John Buscema, which was absolutely incredible stuff. Jack Kirby, of course, with Joe Sinnott and gosh, I guess like and Don Heck. These are people that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And Al Milgrom, even before I started working over his stuff, when he was doing the Avengers and I was working with Joe Sinnott, doing the background inks on that. There are a lot of people that are in the industry that I look at, especially like from the 80s, 90s, that I really use now as like part of my style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to these heroes here, when you started on the Phantom, I'm assuming you went back and read a lot of the old Phantom strips. Did that?
I read a few. Yeah,
you read a few. I'm sure.
I read.
Did you read any other, like get into any other strips because of reading the Phantom?
Well, I got to tell you, I really liked the comic strips even before the Phantom. I mean, I would read the dailies and the Sunday comics, every week. I always loved them. I never thought I would do one, but I always loved them. Dick Tracy and Prince Valiant, and like all the other what is Smokey Stover's, Bonnie Google, those are the ones that were out when I was a kid. Family Circus, and I always loved reading them. I always enjoyed it. I loved the jokes, and I loved the ones that had continuity to them. Terry and the Pirates.
Terry and the Pirates was fantastic.
Jeez.
I have some collections of those at home.
Yeah, and Steve Canyon.
Yeah, Steve Canyon. One of my teachers was Dick Rockwell, who inked the strip, and then when Milt Caniff passed away, he finished the strip for the year, and then they retired it back in the 80s. But yeah, I studied with him in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Oh, amazing.
He was a great guy. I actually went to his house to do work because I was in an independent study school, and he lived near me. So he lived like a couple of towns away. It was a straight half-hour drive, like on the main road.
Wow.
And he lived right off there, and he had some of the most beautiful stuff. He had he did court drawings a lot, and he had court drawings from Jimmy Hoffa's trial on his wall that he did. He had on another wall going up the stairs. He had art from the National Cartoon Society. So I'm seeing like original Charles Schultz and Walt Walker, like these, Sergio Aragones, all these like just jam pages they did, and I was like, oh my god. And then you go down into his like living room or family room, whatever it was, and then off that was his studio. So it was amazing to see that stuff.
Absolutely incredible.
But yeah, no, having him as a teacher was very. I've had a couple. I haven't had many pro teachers, but I had him and I had Tom Gill, and Tom
Gill
was one of the most amazing guys.
Yes,
I've ever met. And what's funny is he was known for drawing horses even before he even saw horses. I don't think he saw horses, he said, until like his 50s or 60s or something, like an actual live horse. Maybe earlier, I don't remember. I remember it was late in life, but he was known for drawing the Lone Ranger and the Bonanzas and all those westerns. The one thing I never learned to draw from him were horses.
Tom Gill was incredible. As a matter of fact, he was at Visual Arts at the time that I was there, and he was like the mentor to the comic books club that we had. Yeah, and I was the vice president.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, my friend Brian Postman, he was the president at that time, and I used to go over to the Visual Arts library. They used to have comic books there, and I actually alphabetized them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did that.
That's awesome. I'm sorry, I'm just checking the time because we only get 45 minutes, so we go to 12:30 here. And so, you know, I could probably sit here and talk to you about artists and stuff all day.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure we'll have a great time, but we're supposed to be focusing on the history of the superhero genre and the classic guys. So we talked about the Phantom. We talked about a couple of characters, you know, that we mentioned. But, you know, in 1938, we get Superman.
Yes.
It's not too far after the Phantom, about 2 years or so. And you've actually worked on Superman stories, correct?
I worked. I actually did one Superman comic book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one issue. That was a little while back. I think that was before the death of Superman.
Okay.
And I worked. I think the penciler was Pete Woods.
Mm-hmm.
On that issue. Yeah, and it was really fun. I you know, to you know, like work on an iconic character that you know, I read as a kid. I collected comic books, you know, and to think that to actually work on a Superman book, that's absolutely me. But that was me actually doing the inks on that. Now I did work on Superman, you know, like in Action Comics with John Byrne, you know, like doing backgrounds on his stuff and maybe some blacks and stuff like that on the characters, but I wasn't doing the inking of the figures at that point. But John was a very generous person, you know, like, to me, in that he gave me billing on the covers of those Action Comics that I did with him, and yeah, it was really nice of him. Didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But it, you know, it got me noticed.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, he really helped me out a lot.
Yeah. And you know, Superman is considered, even though I consider the Phantom as the first superhero, Superman is considered the world's first superhero by, you know, because, you know, I guess he was the first one in the cape and the first one in officially the tights, I guess. The
there
way
you go.
They're looking at it.
Right.
And you know, the era. It's interesting when you look at comics throughout the decades. You know, in the 30s, it was more mysticism than sci-fi, and Superman really was a sci-fi character.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons I like the Phantom is because there was that mysticism behind him, even though he didn't have any magical powers. It was the mythology behind him, like we talked about, the ghost who walks never dies, that type of stuff. There was this mysticism around the character.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Even, you know, and obviously you had Mandrake, who was created by Lee Falk around the same time too, right? Shortly after.
That's right. Actually, it was before him. Yes, it was before. Yeah. Him and Lothar. Yes.
Yeah. And so we get Superman, who in that era was a science fiction character, because we didn't really see sci-fi more until like the late 40s and 50s. Because if you look at the characters, you know, that came out in the 40s, because after Superman came out, everyone was doing it. We get Batman in 39.
Yes.
You know, we get characters like Dr. Fate that comes out.
Spectre.
Spectre. Like DC just did tons and tons of mystical characters.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't change really anything sci-fi until the Silver Age in the 60s, when they revamped the Flash and Green Lantern, and they were outer space and chemical accidents and all that stuff. And stuff. Now, when we look back at the older comics, like what we would consider the golden age of comics, those characters obviously inspired so much. What, you know, when you go back and look at those, I don't know if you read a lot of Golden Age stuff or whatever, but if you go back and look at those, what was it about those characters that you think gave them such staying power for today?
Oh, wow. Well, with Superman and Batman, you know, like, I mean, you know, besides being polar opposites, it's that Superman was like this perfect human, I mean, this perfect. Well, he wasn't even human; he was actually an alien, but he was this perfect being that was, like able to, like help people, and and it was something that people can fantasize. Wow, I wish I could be, something like that. Oh, I could just wish I could fly. Which was absolutely amazing. At first, he was leaping around, and then he finally got to the point of flying, and or to have the strength, or to be able to repel bullets, or just to be a good guy and to go out and fight crime yourself. Just imagine doing something like that. So I guess that locked onto a lot of people's what they wished. Same thing with Batman, like being able to go out there, at night and, strike fear in the hearts of people, and wanting to make a better world.
Yeah.
It's like it's something that you kind of like you lock on to, and you want to read, you want to see what's going to be next, and see, and just kind of imagine yourself, like being that, not being it, but like imagine yourself being it.
Yeah.
Just really cool. Hawkman, any of these guys, I mean, it's just fantasy.
Yeah,
it's fantasy.
But we got that new era, and everyone calls comics modern mythology, and I think back then is when the myths really started. They were pulling off things. I mean, Superman, the story of Moses, kind of, and you look at those things, and Batman, he's based on Zorro.
Yes.
Who was a fantastic character, and you look at like the Scarlet Pimpernel and all those guys who influenced Batman. And sometimes I try to look at characters and see where could I find them in history and who they were pulling from. I'm very big on trying to find that stuff out.
Sure.
And I think for me that's why some people relate to them, because they're based on stories from there. These days, certain characters, like you take Zorro for example, people know him, but he's more popular in Spanish-speaking countries than in America. You look at the Phantom, and he's overseas. Actually, Australia is huge.
Yes.
People. America, you don't see that, and you're only seeing like the big names now, Superman and all these guys, and the modern these modern myths are, they've changed throughout the eras, and there was a different type of storytelling. Even if you look at the old Superman, I remember I have some of the strip collections. Superman, he was a nice guy who meant to do things, and he fought gangsters mostly in the beginning. He wasn't. There was no Lex Luthor, no Lois Lane in the beginning.
No.
But I remember there's a comic strip I had in the collection of Superman dailies where there's a woman who like attacks him, like to go slap him. He grabs her and he spanks her.
No.
And that was like okay in 1940 whatever.
Yeah, they had a cover with I think Superman spanking.
It's just
oh my God.
We won't have that today, but I'm just
saying
that
will not happen
the
today.
The storytelling was a lot different back then.
Yes.
And a lot of characters have like I said, they have the staying power. Superman, he's been able to change, he evolved, all this stuff.
Yes.
Same thing with Batman.
Yes.
But there's a lot of copycats that came out of that era as well.
This is true. Yes.
And a lot of them are now in public domain. I don't know if you follow public domain characters at all.
I have seen a few of them. It's really amazing, what you can do with those characters.
Yeah. I mean, for anyone watching, whether at home or in the audience, if you're not familiar with public domain, basically means the copyright is out of date and anyone has access to those characters. Actually, there is going to be, I forget when, is it a couple of years from now, Superman Action Comics #1 is going to go into public domain. Which I don't know how that's going to work out.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
I don't.
The copyrights, the copyright stuff changes often.
I'm sure Warner Brothers will make sure, just like Disney will make sure.
Well, that's why the new person, I believe, in charge of the whole copyright, thing is the next Disney employee.
There you go.
I just read that somewhere. But no, these characters, and I don't know if you're familiar with any, but a lot of them were, because public domain is getting a big resurgence of them, especially on Kickstarters and Indiegogos. People are doing a lot of public domain stuff. Yeah. And there's some popular characters people may know, like the Black Terror. The Green Llama. There's just a bunch.
Yes.
Right. and such a lot of stuff to pull from. But again, these are all copycats. Technically, like
Yes.
Superman came out, Batman came out, everyone makes their own Superman and Batman. There's Black Owl, there's
Oh, sure.
you know, I think Black Lion, who's kind of like almost like a Batman meets Phantom, if I remember correctly.
Oh my God.
And I'm just curious on your take. You've seen a few.
Mhm.
Is that you know, these copycat, and I don't like to use the word copy, public domain guys. Do you see? Have you noticed anything with them in the sense of the stories that they're telling? Because they're trying to bring back some of that feel of the golden age in these books.
Yeah, there are some people. I met one guy that's publishing some of those characters,
Mhm.
and you know, like it looks pretty good because they got a couple of the artists that were working back in, you know, like the 80s, 90s, you know,
Yeah.
that are now doing that. Penciling, inking, you know, like writing the books.
Mhm.
So I'm really hoping that they turn out good. I don't know if they're out yet, but yeah, they'll be out there soon.
Oh, I'm looking
Next-
forward to that.
yeah.
I try to follow a lot of. I find the public domain characters fascinating. Like there's a guy, I think his name's Otto Man or Adam Man or something.
Adam Man.
Adam Man, and he's basically Superman. You know.
Yeah.
I actually have a little cartoony sketch of him at my table.
Okay.
And I also have a cartoony sketch of Strongman, if you know that, who he has like a giant V on his chest. I think it stood for victory or something like that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of that, and I think those characters keep that feel of what was happening in the golden
back
age
then in the 40s.
Yeah, in the 40s and stuff, and
Yes.
because I mean, there, you know, you can look at stuff like quality comic characters who some are in, but you know, DC basically has
right.
those guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're talking about like Uncle Sam.
Things like that. Yeah, I mean, but even before, I'm talking about characters before, kind of in public domain. You know, there's all these great stuff that's out there that really keep that feeling alive.
Yes.
Yes. And you know, I don't know where I'm going with this.
No. It's like
it's an interesting topic.
I absolutely agree. You know, like they sometimes, you know, like have that feel of the old 40s or the 50s.
Yeah.
You know, like stories. You know, like, and I'm looking forward to them actually. You know, because a lot of stuff now is kind of dark. You know, and I think that, you know, need to have some of the old stuff.
Well,
there.
I find the reason this is my own opinion, so people out there don't hate me, don't do anything against me. But back in the 90s, I think that's when the dark era of comics came out.
Yeah.
And you know, and even though it was a good story, the death of Superman, I think, started it all because everyone had to compete.
Yeah.
With that, Batman gets his back broken. Spider-Man's a clone.
Well, yeah, the Dark Knight. Yes, the Dark
Knight
books, the Frank Miller stuff.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. It's just all of a sudden. Then you had obviously the Image books of like Spawn, and everybody became dark and horror based and
dark demon-y. Yeah, sure.
Although I love Etrigan, by the way. So I'm a big Etrigan fan.
Oh yeah, sure. The demon. Oh yeah, I love that. Jason Blood. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic story.
Absolutely.
Which could technically, a character like that, even though he's not in public domain, his backstory being from King Arthur, Merlin, all that is public domain, guys. You just can't use Etrigan.
Right.
But yeah, so that like all that stuff is great. You can pull from that for your history, your mythology.
Oh, absolutely. Morgan Le Fay. Yeah. Oh, crap. Yeah.
But I think what's going on now is there's like a trend of people trying to bring back the 90s style, at least in art. I've seen a lot of that on things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Their books kind of have that 90s feel, and I don't know if that's influencing the stories that they want to do because
that's interesting.
The 90s was an interesting time of comics.
Yeah, they were. It was changing. There was they even had a sort of like anime sort of style to them too in some ways, but there was a lot of different styles, I guess. The more elongated figures, you know, like and they were and it was also the time when computer coloring was starting and everybody was still trying to find their way and you know, like making sure the coloring didn't look muddy, you know, like so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I was learning because I started in the independent comic stuff actually in '97 with self-publishing, but I was in school and actually working professionally, doing stuff in Photoshop and all the stuff that people were learning to color in Photoshop was
Yes.
what I was doing either in
Yes.
school or on the job, and I wasn't coloring comics at the time, but I took what I was doing and was learning coloring techniques and experimenting in Photoshop and doing test prints and would it print in a book, and
Right.
it was a very experimental time
Yes.
for comics, but it was a
yes.
big thing for for indie comics back
Yeah.
then.
Absolutely.
I think that started more in the mid to late '80s with Ninja Turtles and everybody coming out and trying to make their own Ninja Turtles.
Turtles and the Tick and all those other,
which
right.
are fantastic books. And
Yes.
some of the parodies that came out, was it Don Chin's, radioactive black belt, adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters? That was a fantastic book.
Wow.
Yes. I don't know, you remember that one?
Yeah, I do remember, like hearing of those characters, and I did look at, I think, one of the books, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that was also around the time that I think that was in New England, and they were, and that's when all that stuff was coming out, and I actually had a chance, I think, to ink like one of the first of the Tick books, but I was too busy. I was doing other stuff for, I think, Marvel at the time, and I just didn't have it. And I wish I did it, but did I? Yeah,
that would have been cool. My first introduction to the Tick was the cartoon before the comics. I didn't.
Really?
Well, where I grew up, my stores weren't indie friendly, so it was basically mainstream stuff. And it wasn't until I started going to college and leaving my area that I found stores that were indie friendly, and I saw comics like Ninja Turtles I saw in stores, but I wasn't really buying them at the time.
Right.
The cartoon was I was 13 when the cartoon came out, and I was going to the comic shop and I was kind of buying some more of the Archie stuff because it looked like the cartoon. But as I hit probably I'd say 16, 17, I started buying the actual comics and reading them and learning the more true storylines.
Yeah, all that stuff was starting to come out, and it was like I actually had a New England comic book shop that was right there, and I think that's where it was like slowly coming about up, like in Boston, like in that area, and I really didn't know what it was, I wish I like had more of a like inkling of like, gee, look at where this is going, I would have loved to have tried it. Oh well.
Let me just check the time, see what we got. We got about 10 more minutes. So let me just see, anybody in the audience in the room or at home have any questions? Hello. Do you have any questions?
I'm just happy to listen.
Happy to listen?
Cool.
Okay. Anybody at home, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in. I see Mike Wilkie's watching, and I can't read it from this angle. Let's see, what does he say?
Love these interviews. Thanks.
Oh, you're very welcome, Mike. Thanks for watching and tuning in. So, obviously 10 minutes, we're not going to be much longer. We're going to wrap up soon. We talked about a bunch of things. We kind of sidetracked, which is okay. It happens all the time. But about I just want to kind of wrap up the stuff from the older comics. Okay. And what I'm just curious about is, I know I asked you kind of like your take and what you were looking at and what their staying power was. We talked about a little bit of the resurgence of that era with public domain. What do you, how do I want to phrase this? Sorry. Okay. Now with the characters going back to the era even before Superman or around the Superman time, now these, like we said, the characters that certain ones had staying power, right, and stuff, and they've changed to fit the era. Mm-hmm. But what do you think with the storytelling Okay,
Yeah.
I want to focus on the storytelling
Okay.
right now. Books back then were more anthology based.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you'd get 3, 4 stories, maybe more. Some even would have little cartoony type of animal stories or little
Oh
strips
yeah,
in them.
right. Yeah.
You know, so you get a sci-fi story, you get a romance, you get a hero, you get a cartoon animal story. Comics don't do that anymore, unfortunately.
No.
You get these great anthologies, but the storytelling from that time, you know, obviously we've gotten better skills, but what do you think of the storytelling from the era that has made characters staying? I mean, you know, that's what I meant when I was talking about staying power, the
right.
storytelling staying power. That, you know, when I mentioned and we kind of sidetracked, but when I said Superman spanked someone in the strip, and obviously that won't happen today, but it was a time of an era, and then you get the '60s Batman, which is all goofy stuff.
Right.
You know, it's like how do you feel the characters evolving
Wow.
from that staying power, the change of society?
Wow. Well, you know, you just look at Batman. When he first started, man, he was grabbing people and throwing people off a roof.
Yeah.
He was, you know, like he was really, and he had a gun.
Yeah. The first couple of issues, right?
Yeah. Before they, you know, like actually, I guess, locked onto his origin or had an idea of his origin. And he went through a whole mess of different phases, from being like that real dark Avenger to being more of the Cape Crusader, who was the Rainbow Batman, or you know, like had the many different suits, or you know, like the giant penny that came rolling down. You know, like it had like that campier feel, and I think it was because of everything that was going on at that time with Wortham and, you know, like the comic code of authority and stuff like that. That stuff had to become more for kids, even though it was more like talking down to the kids than actually, you know. Like,
because
I think
I know they say comics were for kids, and that era is like you're a criminal because they were sending like comics to prisons, I believe, for the inmates to read. But you know, I don't think comics were always made for kids. It's like when you went to the movies in that era, the cartoons that they had in the theater, you know, the theatrical shorts, Looney Tunes, whatever, they weren't made for kids.
Well, look at Tom and Jerry.
Yeah,
Holy
exactly.
cow. You know,
you look at that, but you got what? A newsreel, you got a movie serial, you got a cartoon,
that's right.
and you got a movie, and you could sit in the theater all day and rewatch it at the time.
Exactly.
And you're paying what, depending on the era, 10 cents a quarter.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It was like nothing, man, but you could sit in there all day long.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like and speaking of that era pulled a lot of comics as their stories for the movie serials. You had Dick Tracy, you even had a Phantom movie serial.
They did have Phantom, yes.
What was his name?
Rex Tyler?
Was that Rex?
Oh, was that? Oh, that might have been Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Jeez.
No. Yeah, I think Rex Tyler was Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Ty something, I think, was his first name. But
I've seen this. I've seen the serials though.
Yeah, I love them.
Mm-hmm.
I love. I even love the Batman serials, Captain America, Captain Marvel. You know, I watch them all.
They were great.
Yeah, and maybe we can sidetrack just, and we'll end on this because we're talking about this. So forget about the question about the storytelling. Let's talk. You know, because today superhero movies are huge.
Yes.
Marvel really found the
formula.
Formula for it. Unfortunately, DC hasn't.
No.
And I'm a bigger DC fan than I am Marvel, so I always root for DC.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be really
cool.
cool.
I have to say that the Batman, I love it.
Okay.
You know, because it was like reading a detective comic, not Batman comic, but a detective comic where he was actually looking for clues and stuff like that. And I won't say anything else.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, so
it's very good.
And I'll be honest, I've been disappointed by DC so many times in the theater.
I know.
And I don't want to be. So I'm waiting for
You're not going to be
Max.
disappointed.
Listen, I have a large TV. I do wish it was bigger. My wife thinks differently. I mean, she says it's big enough. I'm looking for an 80-inch TV one day.
Oh my gosh, I'd love that.
Yeah, I have a 60-inch. So I think that's a big enough screen to sit on and watch it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You'll have fun. Once it finally gets there.
Yeah. It comes out next month, sometime in April. They're bringing it to HBO Max.
Wow, that's great. Well, they're making their money for it right now. Anyway.
But
sure.
But speaking of I know we're sidetracking again, but the they're making a lot of movies based on superheroes. People are trying to buy up comic book properties to make
Yes.
movies out of.
Yes.
But back then, the movie serials were all based on the superheroes.
Mhm.
And some of them were things like we said, the Phantom and Superman and
Flash Gordon,
Flash
Buck
Gordon,
Rogers.
yeah,
Yeah.
Buster Crabbe played both, I
Yes,
believe.
yes, he
and,
did.
you had you had everything. A lot of those popped out of the newspaper before even the books.
That's right.
And people were going to the waiting to see what was happening in the Dick Tracy and all these things, and which was another serial.
Mhm. Yeah.
People have always, I think, have gone to comics for stories in the films. What do you think? I know there's limitations in the storytelling, what you could do, computer graphic. Well, they didn't have graphics, but with filmmaking back then.
Mhm.
Just how you feel the storytelling of the movie serials you've seen based on the comic characters. Were they a good depiction of them? Because it was
Some of them were,
Yeah.
Batman sort of was,
Yeah.
I mean, they had, like Batman and Robin, and and the thing is, what they had, which Marvel, really used, was the continuation.
Mhm.
To be continued, they had the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
To make you want to go and pick up the next comic book.
Yeah.
So I thought that was ingenious, and I just feel that the people back then, they had limited budgets.
Mhm.
They could only do but so much, but they did amazing
Yeah.
things. Like I got to say, with Captain Marvel, when he had him flying through the sky,
Yeah.
or even Superman when they changed it when he leaps into animation.
Yeah.
To get that feeling, I feel that they were trying very hard to do what the comics books were back at that time.
Yeah. Just speaking of flying, and we're going to wrap it up here in a moment, but I just want to say this. So the movie series, I think one of the most realistic flying I've ever seen back then, and sometimes it even is better than some of the movies I saw like within the last, well, now we got computer graphics, but before like the era of computer, it was Rocket Man. Did you ever watch that movie
I
series?
watched Rocket Man. I love Rocket Man.
Because there was a mannequin they put on a string.
Yes, and he went soaring through the sky. Yeah.
It was. I think he did what George Reeves did in Superman and jumped off a springboard first to make it look like he was flying, and then they cut him and they'd have him attached from like a building to a tree or something, and he just zip-lined them down.
Yes.
And it was fantastic.
I love the way that looked.
And some of the because they would get cool camera angles like up shots and all this stuff. They were doing things, and it was a very, very cool.
Yeah, for the money that they had, he was called Rocket Man, so you had to see him fly. So they figured out the best way, the cheapest way, I guess, that they could do it. But it looked great on the screen.
Yeah, which then later we get the Rocketeer, which I believe is homage to.
Oh my gosh.
To him, and one of my favorite comics.
Yes, Dave Stevens. Yes.
I love the movie.
I
thought it was a fun one.
I did. That pose that he has up with the American flag, and he takes out his gun, and he does that pose. Gorgeous stuff.
Anyway, we got to wrap up, so I want to thank you for doing this panel with us today. I had a lot of fun chatting.
Yes, had a good time.
Yeah, it's hard to keep the 45 minutes when I enjoyed talking to the people I'm talking with, and I'm sure we could have done a lot more. So we got. I just want to see one more comment coming in here.
Tell Keith hi. Oh, from Izzyverse.
Hi, Izzy. Oh, you know Izzy.
Yes. Hey,
Izzy's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
So, good guy.
Past convention. Yes.
Yes. So that's it, guys. I'll be back at 3:30 today with Ron McCluskey from the Frankenstein, the Boris Karloff historian. I'm looking forward to doing that.
Cool.
I'm a big Universal monster fan, and Frankenstein is some of my favorite movies. Actually, it's my second favorite after The Wolfman.
Oh, we can talk about this.
Yeah, we're gonna have some talks off air. So, you guys, thanks for joining. Come back at 3:30. I'll be live streaming that as well, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye.